Hello, this is our generic enemy spawner. This is a very simple asset pack just to kind of spawn enemies. We have it right here into the map. You can just go into the content here, open it up, open up the blueprints, and take the generic enemy spawner and just drag it out into the map. I already have this one set up to make it a little bit faster. Basically, you're going to get a lot of values in here. You've got some functions that are exposed in case you need them. You set up your enemy classes. So I set up some cones, cubes, spheres, and cylinders. You could set up spawn points if you want. These are manual location spawn points. I don't need them here because I used these spawner pads you can see. That is also included here. We can set up our spawn interval. So this is how long it takes for the in-between spawns. Right now I just have it set to 1 so it's nice and quick. Max alive, which is how many are allowed to be alive at any time. Okay, simple. Auto start, if you want this to just start spawning as soon as it comes into the map, we're going to use that for now. Total enemies is how many total enemies, you want to be allowed to spawn in this sequence. So if I have max alive 100, well, as these 100 are spawned and died, it's going to continue this counter until we reach 200 in total spawned. Okay, if that makes sense. Interval variance is a value, so if I want to set this to 5, but maybe I want it to be a little random, it'll pick a random value between 0 and 5 and spawn in that interval. We have weights here, and this is going to be paired directly with our enemy classes. So index 0 is for the cone, index 1 is for the cube, so on and so forth, and this is going to determine how frequently they spawn. Obviously, these values closer to 1 are more often. Values closer to 0 are less often. We have our use weights. So this is if you want to use those weights. If not, it's just going to pick one out of that pool at random. Okay. Use spawners. This is if you want to set up spawner pads out on the field and use those instead of manually putting in the location. Totally up to you. And allow overlap. This is going to allow enemies to spawn on top of each other if you set it to true. This only works with spawner pads though because they have this collision sphere. Right? That's cool. We're going to set this down to 0.5 and use interval variance. We're just going to set it to a random value here. And we're just going to do this. And these should spawn awful fast. Yeah, so we can see them all popping up here. Popping up, popping up, popping up. By the way, it's 15 on each side, 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom. So it's about full here. See, it capped out how many enemies are allowed to be alive at once. So that's that. Now if I were to set this to try to make it go even faster, and we'll go with 200 here, and we will allow the overlap. So now enemies can spawn on top of each other. We're going to see just very fast. Right, very fast. We can even see the circles spawning over the spheres, spheres spawning over the circles. Obviously, you can't really tell with the squares, but I guess it helps if I set my max alive to something like 50 so you can see that. So very quickly, right, our enemies got capped at 50. There's only 50 enemies allowed to be alive at once. And once these enemies start to despawn, which are, again, they're all on a 15-second timer, it'll continue spawning enemies. So if you were in the game, right, shooting the enemies, killing them, then they would continuously spawn until the certain amount of enemies is on the field. Okay, so that's the auto start system. Pretty simple, right? Easy to use. Okay, so now I've set auto spawn to be off. Okay, and I have a few keys set up in the level to basically spawn enemies specifically. So if I press 1, I'm going to spawn 5 enemies in the north. And it's only going to use 2 different enemy types. It looks like we rolled all cones. That's with the weights on there. We'll show that code in a second. And now that those have despawned, if I press 2 here, okay, we're going to do east and west. You can see some enemies spawning east, some enemies spawning west. We only did 7 here, so right, nice and easy. And wait for those to despawn. And now we have 3 here, which is north, south, and west. So we have enemies spawning in the north, enemies spawning in the south, and enemies spawning in the west. It's kind of randomly picking which side. Okay, nice and simple there. Alright, nice and easy. So with our spawner pads, when you drag a spawner pad out into the world, okay, we can see our spawner pad here. We get only a few options. Use, so do you want to use this spawner pad by default, which can be true or false. The sphere radius, so this is for the collision sphere, so to detect the is spawned, right? So this is for when we have our allow overlap clicked, right? And direction, so this is where you would set in either north, south, east, or west, whatever text you want, maybe north, northeast, or maybe barracks or garage, you know, whatever you want here. You can also set this to an enumerator or an integer if you want to in the code pretty easily. Right, very simple code here. Everything is in blueprints, so super easy to read, super easy to see. Same thing with the spawner manager. This is just an example spawner manager. This isn't really something we included in the asset pack, but it should help you to understand the basic systems that go into making a spawner manager. And this is our enemy spawner. So this has all of the utility functions. It has the event begin play to set up auto start. It has the random location, and it has all of our spawner functions. So we have 3 different types of spawners. The auto spawn system, which is what you just saw. We have a spawn single system to just spawn one enemy out of the pool. And we have a spawn specific, so this is good for bosses if you just want to spawn a specific enemy. Everything's nice and commented, plenty of details in here. Super easy to read, super easy to mod. We've also got setters for each parameter that we have here. So if you want to do this dynamically at runtime, right, you can open up our spawner manager, which is where we did the example, and this is pretty much where we are setting things dynamically at runtime. When I'm pressing that, it's 1 key, 2 key, 3 key. And it's just a simple reset all params. Gives you all the parameters that you'll need to reset all those values and do it again. Again, this is a simple spawner. So the spawner itself is the asset here, not the manager or the system. This is just a generic enemy spawner. I hope you purchase the asset pack. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and enjoy.